The arena thundered with noise, alien war cries, chants, stomping feet, and slithering limbs, pounding the tiered stone amphitheater of Velkara Prime. Flickering light from 100 torches cast shadows across the ancient obsidian walls, each carved with scenes of battles, past Shantari warriors breaking bones, spilling blood, claiming honor. This was the Pit of Honor. And tonight, its breathless crowd had gathered for one reason only, to witness Master Kolvar prove his supremacy once again. Standing at the center of the pit, Kolvar raised two of his 4 muscular arms in salute. The other 2 folded across his broad chest in ceremonial form. His obsidian-scaled body glistened with oil and ritual paint, the red and gold stripes marking him as a grandmaster of the Shantari art of Velka Daruun, a form passed down through centuries, said to be undefeated across star systems. He bowed, low and slow, then turned to face the viewing platform. "I honor the right," Kolvar said, his voice deep and clicking, amplified by the arena's voice stones. "And tonight, I accept a challenge from a human." The crowd erupted in laughter, hissing and shrieking in amusement. "A human? Here? They send a primate to dance in our temple of pain?" hissed one of the elders. Kolvar spread his arms wide, his long claws glinting in the light. "They rely on machines, on tricks, no form, no discipline. They are blunt instruments, incapable of precision." He sneered, flexing his upper limbs. "Tonight, I will show the galaxy what real mastery looks like." The gates at the far end of the pit hissed open. A low, deliberate clank echoed across the arena as Sergeant Elias Brand stepped forward. He was a stark contrast to Kolvar, shorter by a meter, wrapped in battered black combat armor with no weapons, no helmet, no insignia. A long scar traced his cheek down to his jawline, like a white slash through granite. His eyes were cold, focused, and silent. Kolvar frowned. Brand stepped into the circle of the pit with no fanfare. No war cry, no pretense, just calm, unblinking resolve. He cracked his knuckles once, the sound barely audible beneath the din. "No blade? No rifle?" Kolvar mocked. "At least die with dignity." Elias said nothing. The bell chimed. The fight began. Kolvar moved like water and thunder, sweeping forward in a blur of motion, delivering a spinning backhand and upward claw strike with his lower arms, while the upper 2 snapped into a textbook Shantari double strike combo, fast, precise, and deadly. Elias didn't strike back. He ducked, shifted, rolled his shoulder just enough that the claws whooshed past his face. One hand touched the ground, steadying him. He pivoted, legs moving like he was trained in a different war altogether. The crowd roared in confusion. Kolvar's second volley came harder, palm strike to the solar plexus, sweep kick, rising jab, but again Elias moved just enough. Not showy, not beautiful, but effective, efficient. Still, the strikes came. A barrage. Kolvar was too fast, too skilled. One clawed hand finally slammed into Elias's ribs. The human staggered, breath catching as he dropped to one knee in the dirt. Dust swirled around him. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Var smirked, but Elias looked up and smiled. Not out of joy, not out of mockery. It was a smile of calculation, of control. A chill crept through the arena, slow and quiet. As nightfall. In that one look, it became clear to anyone truly watching. Elias hadn't come to win through strength. He had come to understand. Kolvar's grin faltered, just slightly. Elias rose slowly to his feet, dust falling from his armor, his eyes locked on the master's stance, reading, learning. His body moved into something new, something not taught by Shantari scrolls or human combat manuals. Something dangerous, and the crowd stopped laughing. Asterisk. The silence in the arena settled like ash after fire. Even the Shantari elders leaned forward in their gilded seats, antennae twitching, uncertain now. Master Kovar adjusted his stance, his claws flexing in irritation. That smile, that damn human smile, had carved out into his composure. The blow he'd landed should have cracked ribs, winded lesser beings, sent most sprawling. Yet Elias Brand stood. And worse, he watched. Elias didn't pace, didn't circle. He simply stood, shoulders squared, weight balanced low, like a man who'd learned to keep his center intact in collapsing cities, not in polished dojos. His gaze never left Kovar's chest, not the eyes, never the limbs. He wasn't tracking showy strikes. He was feeling rhythm, timing, flow. Kovar attacked again. The movements were flawless, textbook Velka Daruun. He twisted into a four-limb strike, rotating through a shifting form known as the Whispering Maw. It was fast, unpredictable, designed to overwhelm slower minds. But Elias wasn't reacting like a martial artist. He reacted like a soldier who'd survived ambushes in zero gravity, melee in molten tunnels, and guerrilla fighters with energy blades. He leaned just enough to the left that Kovar's high strike sailed past his ear. His boot swept backward, catching a loose stone, and he pivoted low, letting Kovar's rising knee strike fly over his back. With a fluid twist, Elias came up behind the alien and shockingly tapped Kovar's back with two fingers. Not a blow, a statement. Kovar whirled, furious, arms flaring. "You mock me?" "No," Elias said, his voice quiet, calm. "I'm measuring you." The crowd hissed. Some booed. Others fell into a stunned hush. Far above, on the platform of honored guests, General Soreth of the Shantari Council whispered, "He's baiting Kovar, and the fool is biting." Kovar roared, his movements now sharper, less composed. His next attack came harder, a direct strike meant to maim. Two fists pounded down like war hammers, while his lower claws swept. For Elias's legs, Elias dropped into a slide, sweeping under the larger fighter's stance. His shoulder rammed into Kovar's left knee, forcing the joint to lock momentarily. Elias popped up behind him, and this time struck. A low, fast elbow to the floating rib. A crunch echoed through the arena. Kovar stumbled. The master's breath caught in his throat as the pain lanced across his side. The move was inelegant, brutal, impossible within the forms of Velka Daruun. But it worked. Elias stepped back. His arms hung loose now, his stance more relaxed, almost lazy. But every line of his body was coiled. Waiting. In the crowd, murmurs swelled. "He's not just resisting," someone said. "He's adapting." Flashbacks flared in Elias's mind between each breath. A hallway on Titan Ridge, bodies falling. Breathing in smoke while radio chatter screamed orders that never came. Training under blackout conditions in simulation domes, where you weren't allowed to block, only redirect, only endure. Pain wasn't the end. It was the start. He remembered. Being knocked down on Earth, getting back up was instinct now. Kovar came again, faster now, more furious. But Elias was inside the arc before the third strike landed. He slammed his elbow into Kovar's bicep joint, twisted under one of the alien's top arms, and dropped his weight. The move wasn't part of any alien martial system. It was pure human combat engineering, half judo, half dirty brawl. Kovar slammed into the dirt. The crowd gasped. Elias stood over him, breathing heavy, focused, not gloating, just ready. Kovar's hands dug into the ground as he slowly rose. His eyes, once filled with superiority, now held a flicker of disbelief. Elias gave him a single nod. "You're strong," he said, "but you don't know what real war feels like, do you?" Kovar didn't answer. His silence was enough. Above. The Shantari elders conferred in tense voices. They had expected a symbolic slaughter, a humiliation of humanity. Instead, they were watching a deconstruction. A soldier dismantling a master, and still Elias hadn't used a single technique anyone recognized. Only grit, not only survival. Only the essence of what made humans terrifying in war. They learned while ill. Bleeding, Kovar braced for the next round, his breathing tight, his stance shifting just slightly. Not traditional. Not by the book, Elias noticed. And he smiled again. The student was becoming a student again, and Elias Brand had only just begun teaching. Asterisk. The torches that lined the arena walls flickered as if sensing the shift in momentum. The audience, once raucous with amusement, had fallen into a taut silence. Even the wind that usually howled through the open sky above Velkara Prime held its breath. Something ancient and unspoken was happening in the Pit of Honor, a lesson not written in scrolls or encoded in battle creeds. It was pain. It was learning. It was change. Kovar stood again, slower this time. A tremor ran down one of his lower arms as he reset it with a sickening crack. The pain didn't shake him. It humbled him. He had trained since childhood in the monastery peaks of Shantari Prime, memorizing every kata, every form, every sacred rhythm. He had never been bested in the right of dominance. Not once. Until now. His gaze met Elias's. No words passed between them. But something did. A shift. A shared recognition. This wasn't about victory anymore. It was about proving who truly understood what it meant to be a warrior. Asterisk. Deep in the shaded corridors beneath the arena, where blood was cleaned from stone, and old wounds whispered warnings, a monk of the Velka order stood still before a glowing panel. He watched Elias's every movement, his alien eyes wide, murmuring to himself, "He's not fighting to win. He's fighting to evolve." Elias exhaled slowly, hands loose at his sides. He wasn't unscathed. His ribs ached from Kovar's initial blow, and his shoulder throbbed where a claw had grazed him. But he welcomed the pain. It reminded him of Titan Ridge, of crawling through corpses with a broken arm, cradling a wounded teammate until extraction arrived too late. He'd learned something back then. You didn't survive by being better. You survived by being adaptable. And that truth flowed now through every nerve in his body. Kovar took a single step forward, not into a stance, just forward. Two of his arms dropped from their defensive positions. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, voice low, barely audible over the crowd's whispering. Elias's eyes flicked to the side. Project Apex, Black Ops hybrid training. Only 6 of us made it through. The rest broke. "You are no monk." "No," Elias said. "I'm something else." Kovar moved again, but slower this time, not out of weakness, but out of awareness. He no longer treated Elias like prey. He treated him like an unknown. And in Velka Doruan, unknowns were dangerous. The clash that followed was less showy. No high arcs. No signature flourishes. It was close, dirty, gritty. Kovar threw a short jab with a lower fist, but Elias ducked low, trapping the wrist and pivoting into the alien space. An elbow met sternum. A headbutt snapped, Kovar's lower jaw aside. The alien reeled. The crowd gasped. Then Elias did something strange. He stepped back, gave Kovar room. "You okay?" he said. Kovar blinked. The word stung worse than the blow. "You mock me again." "No, I respect you." Kovar straightened slowly, jaw tight, blood trickling down one fang. "Respect is earned through form, through grace." "No," Elias said, his voice steady. "Respect is earned through pain, through getting back up." The moment hung between them. The torchlight seemed dimmer now, the air thicker. Even the arena's ancient AI, built to record outcomes and archive combat styles, began recording in an alternate format, unclassified, unstructured, human-style improvisation. It had no protocol for what it was seeing dot up in the command box. A military envoy from the United Human Colonies leaned forward. Is he trying to teach the Shintari? Here, General Soreth's mandibles twitched. He's trying to show us something we refuse to see. Kovar drew in a long breath. Then he stepped into a new stance. It wasn't from the scrolls. It wasn't approved by the council, but it mimicked the low balance and shifting weight Elias had used moments before. 4 arms bent, not in ritual but in function. The crowd murmured. Elias smiled. There you go. They launched at each other. Again, this time Kovar didn't overreach. He flowed, reacted, adapted. The fight was no longer warrior versus savage. It was student versus student. And as dust rose around them, blood mixing with sweat and soil, the elders began to understand what was unfolding. The master was becoming something rare. He was becoming a student again. And Elias Brandscard, quiet. Human wasn't here to win. He was here to wake them up. The roar that erupted as Kovar shifted into that unfamiliar stance wasn't one of mockery this time. It was tension, all confusion. The kind of sound a crowd makes when the script they've memorized is suddenly thrown into the fire. Every Shintari in the arena felt it. Their champion, their master, was abandoning tradition in real time. And not for desperation, but for survival. Dust curled at Elias Brand's feet as he rolled his neck, arms loose, stance fluid. He didn't grin this time. He didn't taunt. He simply nodded once and moved. The fight began again. They collided at the center of the pit like a fusion of war and will. Kovar lashed out with a sudden sweep of all 4 limbs, too low, too high. But Elias had already dropped his center of gravity, shifting just enough to avoid the sweep, pivoting inside the arc. He hooked Kovar's ankle with his heel and delivered a short, vicious strike to the inner knee joint. The alien staggered, caught himself, twisted and countered. Not with a textbook palm strike or ceremonial lock, but with a short jab too. Elias's kidney, followed by a rising elbow, that sent a shockwave through Elias's chest. Elias stumbled back, blood on his lip, and smiled again, not at the hit, at the progress. Kovar's breathing was uneven, one arm still damaged from the earlier lock, but his eyes gleamed, not with pride, but clarity. The audience didn't know what to do. Warriors of the Shintari did not learn in battle. They demonstrated. They performed. But here, in front of thousands, their master was evolving. Every breath, every shift in weight, was a rejection of centuries of rigid form. And Elias? He welcomed the chaos. He charged low, shoulder first, faking a sweep before pivoting into a tight, spiraling strike upward. Kovar parried with one hand, but another arm was just a breath too slow, and Elias slipped inside the guard again. His forearm smashed against Kever's clavicle with a sickening crack. The master grunted, and his legs buckled. But he didn't fall. Instead, Kovar mirrored the motion. Sloppier, heavier, but effective. His shoulder slammed into Elias's side with brutal force, knocking the human off his footing and sending him skidding across the sand. Elias rolled, came up in a crouch, one hand planted in the dust. He coughed once, blood on his teeth, and then he laughed out. It wasn't loud. It wasn't mocking. It was sharp, grateful. Now you're getting it, he whispered. Kovar straightened, blood trickling from the edge of his jawline. Your way. It makes no sense. You break rhythm. That's the point, Elias said, rising to his feet, chest heaving. In war, rhythm gets you killed. All across the arena, Shantari warriors young and old watched with wide eyes. They had grown up memorizing the Velka Daruan forms, taught that deviation was dishonor. But here stood their champion, and a human, dancing a new kind of battle unwritten, unpredictable, unrelenting, and neither was backing down. Kovar rushed forward in a blur, faster now, his movements a fusion of tradition and chaos. He struck with 3 arms, feinted with the 4th. Elias didn't dodge. He leaned into the strikes, absorbing 2 of them just enough to step inside and lock the 4th arm at the elbow. He twisted hard, wrenching Kovar's limb at an unnatural angle, then pivoted behind him and slammed a knee into the back of the alien's leg. Kovar dropped to 1 knee, but instead of breaking, he moved with the fall, rolling sideways, launching himself off the ground with raw force, and caught Elias mid-pivot with a sweeping arm that sent the human sprawling. They were no longer fighting. They were clashing. Fluid violence met shifting survival. Discipline met defiance. And the sand drank it all. Minutes passed. Dozens of blows exchanged. Dozens more avoided. And then it happened. Elias ducked under a spinning strike, twisted into a clinch, and slammed his forehead into Kovar's face. The crowd gasped as the alien staggered backward, dazed. Elias didn't follow through. He let Kovar recover. Kovar wiped blood from his mouth, panting. "You could have finished me." Elias's shoulders rose and fell slowly. "I'm not here to beat you." Kovar narrowed his eyes. "Then why?" Elias stepped forward, blood dripping from his fingers. "I'm here to prove something." "To your people?" "No," Elias said, locking eyes with him. "To yours." And then Kovar did the unthinkable. He bowed, not the shallow bow of formality. A full, deliberate, ancient bow of learning. The bow of a student. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elders stood. Officials exchanged urgent signals. But Kovar didn't care. He rose, staring at Elias with something no Shantari had ever directed at a human before. Respect. The right wasn't over, but the war between tradition and truth had just begun. The sand beneath their feet was stained with blood red and violet, human and Shantari. The crowd had long stopped cheering. There was no victor to celebrate, no humiliation to revel in. What they saw now in the pit of honor was something deeper, older, and far more dangerous than spectacle. 2 warriors stood amid the dust and heat. One a human, battered but steady, forged in the chaos of forgotten wars. The other, an alien master, whose every breath had once echoed the sacred rhythms of his people now, unraveling those teachings with every step. Elias Brand cracked his knuckles, the motion slow, deliberate. Sweat traced through the grime on his face. His lip bled. One eye was beginning to swell shut. He didn't care. He was watching Kovar, not his face's center, his weight, his feet. The alien stance was no longer Velka Daruan. Number. Name existed for it. It was new, mutating, learning. Kovar raised his upper arms and let his lower ones fall, curling one behind his back in a subtle guard. It was a defensive stance half borrowed from tradition, half stolen from Elias. "Path you walk," Kovar rasped, voice hoarse. "It has no honor in our texts." Elias moved forward, slow, balanced. "Then maybe your texts are out of date." And then they were at it again. But this wasn't the elegant duel from earlier. This wasn't grand, flowing motion or rehearsed brutality. This was personal, guttural. A war of breath and grit, of will and wounds. Kovar struck low with a hook from his rear arm, and Elias caught it at the wrist, locking and twisting before stepping into the alien's guard and driving a palm into his chest. Kovar stumbled, but pivoted with the blow and answered with a rising knee to Elias's hip. It hit hard. Elias grunted, grabbed the knee as it came down, and drove his head into Kovar's jaw. They broke apart, both reeling. Blood dripped. Freely now. Neither could pretend to be clean. The audience was silent. No one blinked. No one spoke. Kovar's shoulders heaved. You are no longer just a soldier. Elias straightened, chest burning, ribs bruised. Neither are you. Just a master. And then he dropped his guard. The crowd gasped. Even Kovar hesitated. I'm done testing you, Elias said quietly. Kovar stared at him, blinking through blood. What are you doing? Elias's chest rose and fell. Trusting you. The Shintari warrior moved fast. A final strike. A clean finish. He could crush this fragile human now. End it. But instead, something strange happened. Kovar launched the strike, but pulled it halfway through. He redirected it, shifted the force. Let it glide past Elias. Elias moved with it, caught the momentum, and in one fluid motion, stepped inside the arc, grabbed Kovar's leading arm, hooked a leg behind the master's knee, and dropped him. Not harshly. Not cruelly. Just completely. The alien hit the dirt with a heavy thud. Elias knelt beside him, breathing hard. That was the move, he whispered. You pulled it. Kovar coughed, chuckled darkly. It was enough. Silence fell again. Then movement. A slow rise. Not from Elias, but from Kovar. The alien master rose to his knees, facing Elias. And then he brought all four hands together, palm over fist, and bowed his head. A collective gasp swept the arena. This was the gesture of submission. Yes, but more than that. This was the gesture of learning, of honoring one who teaches. The pit of honor had not witnessed it in generations. From the stands, a cry rang out. This is sacrilege. He is not of the form. But Kovar stood, turning slowly to face the crowd, blood on his face, fire in his voice. No, he growled. He is not of our form, but he has taught me. And you will listen. Elias watched in silence as Kovar raised his voice to the heavens. This human did not defeat me through brutality or tricks. He broke my arrogance. He shattered my illusions. He showed me that a warrior spirit does not live in format. Lives in adaptation. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some nodded. Others looked away, afraid of what this meant. Kovar turned back to Elias, and for the first time, his voice softened. I yield, Sergeant Brand, not because you are stronger, but because you opened my eyes. Elias simply nodded. He didn't gloat. He didn't raise his arms in triumph. He reached out a hand, and Kovar took it. They stood together, side by side. And in that moment, master and soldier became equals. Above them, the high elders stirred in silence, their old ways crumbling like ancient stone, beneath the weight of undeniable truth. In the dirt, among blood and bruises, a new martial legacy had just been born, and it bore a very human name. Asterisk, the wind, shifted over the arena as the twin moons of Velkara Prime slipped into alignment above the open sky. A strange calm fell upon the pit of Honor One that no crowd noise dared interrupt. For the first time in generations, there was no victor's speech, no ceremonial flourish, no ritual chant echoing from the high walls. Just silence. And two warriors standing side by side, bloodied and breathing as one. Sergeant Elias Brand stood tall, though he felt the ache in every inch of his body. His left eye was nearly swollen shut, ribs cracked, knuckles raw. But he didn't care, because beside him stood Master Kovar, the undefeated champion of the Shintari, now bearing not the posture of a ruler, but that of a man who had seen the edge of his understanding, and stepped past it. In the viewing box above the arena, voices rose in protest. This is unacceptable. hissed one of the elders. "A human cannot teach the sacred arts." "He didn't teach our forms," another spat. "He defiled them." Kovar turned toward them, raising a clawed hand to silence the debate. His voice boomed with the force of a mountain splitting. "Enough." His gaze swept the stands, his people, his students. What I witnessed today was not defilement. It was awakening. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. This human fought with no nameable style. He did not follow patterns. He moved with instinct, precision, chaos, yes, but also wisdom. Every mistake I made, he turned into an opportunity. Not with strength alone, but with understanding. The elders watched him like he'd grown a second head. I have trained my whole life to master the old ways. And yet, this man, this human forced me to evolve beyond them in a single battle. That is not disgrace. His voice dropped, full of conviction. That is growth. Elias said nothing. He simply looked toward the central dais, where a robed figure descended with slow, heavy steps. It was the High Oracle, the one who wrote the rites, whose words shaped laws across star systems. She hadn't stepped into the pit in over a century. Her voice was softer than Kovar's, but it cut through the air like a blade. "Sergeant Brand, step forward." Elias limped into the center, sweat clinging to his brow. "You are not trained in our forms," she said. "You carry no sacred marks. And yet, you have humbled our finest warrior." Elias nodded once. "Wasn't my goal." "Then what was?" He paused. The words were heavy, real. To survive, to adapt. To show that no matter the technique, the species, or the legacy, we all bleed the same. And sometimes, we learn the most from those we underestimate. The oracle's expression didn't change. But slowly, she reached into her robes and removed a small silver disc etched with Shantari glyphs. She stepped forward and placed it in Elias's hand. The crowd fell still again. "That," she said, "is the sigil of shared flame. A symbol of unity between combatants who burn through the limits of tradition. A sigil of interspecies recognition. Something so rare it had almost become myth." Elias stared at it, then at Kovar. "I don't want to be your enemy," he said, voice low. Kovar gave him a slow, solemn nod. "And help me train the next generation." Elias blinked. "What?" "We will not erase our traditions," Kovar continued, "but we will evolve them. Your people fought beasts among stars. You've survived voids and firestorms. That knowledge deserves a place in the pit." A slow ripple began in the audience. First a nod, then another, then thunderous applause. Not the wild cheering of battle-drunk crowds, but the sustained, reverent applause of a people who had just witnessed a turning point in their civilization. Elias stood there, blinking through blood and sweat, as alien children mimicked his movements in the crowd. Warriors began dropping to one knee, not in defeat, but in recognition. High above, the AI systems of Velkara Prime updated the sacred codex. New form registered. Brand. Flow status validated. As the torches dimmed and night claimed the city, Elias looked down at the silver disc in his hand, a symbol once meant for Shantari alone. And now, because of one battle, one truth, and one broken human body that never stopped standing shared by two species, the pit of honor would never be the same, and neither would the galaxy. Asterisk, the end. Asterisk, asterisk.